Thank you very much. Welcome to Food Demo 2020 Fried Rice. We're going to go through the whole thing with you. You'll probably learn a little bit about knife skills, setup, of course, how to cook fried rice, a little bit of history, and then a little bit of random information. I would urge you throughout the process, if you have a question as far as what I'm doing, to go ahead and pop that question in, type it in. That way we can address that for you. It's a very open communication type demo here, so don't feel like you're just stuck listening to me the whole time. So let's move forward. As far as fried rice, it kind of has an interesting history. They're a little bit unsure of exactly when it was invented and by who. As far as what I could find, it dates back to 589 to 618 AD. It supposedly started in the city of Yangzhou, and that would be located in the Jiangsu province. Excuse me if I messed up any of those titles there. As far as what it seemed like was the main fried rice that they compared everything to is called the Yang Chow fried rice. That consisted of pork, prawns, scallions, and peas, and fluffy rice. From there, there's been all different kinds of modifications. When I worked at the Hyatt Regency in La Jolla in San Diego, I used to work a wok station. We had a 12-ingredient fried rice that consisted of rock shrimp, char siu pork, shiitake mushrooms, which we have today. They're really good for flavor. Minced chicken, all different kinds of vegetables, bamboo sprouts, baby carrots. And what I'm kind of getting at here is the fried rice I'm going to show you today is very basic. It's very good, but it's very basic. But when it comes to cooking, don't be afraid to kind of step out of your comfort zone as far as you need to play around with it. I wouldn't feel like you're locked into ingredients per se. I found in my cooking career, sometimes the mistakes that I have made ended up teaching me more of the successes that I've had. So don't feel like you're really stuck to borders, I guess you would say. I think a lot of people get so stuck on the recipe, they're scared to step outside of it. And with what I do, eventually we use recipes as references for ingredients, but ultimately we rely on our techniques to really get the dishes done, and that's something that I'm going to go into today. So without further ado, I'm going to probably tilt the screen ever so slightly. The first part of cooking is you really want to get all of your items in place. That way you're not running around, you're not disorganized. You kind of want to have what's called your mise en place in place. And that basically looks like this. You can see I have all my bowls, I have my spoons, I have my vegetables there, I have my cutting board, I have everything from my knife to even my peeler ready. That way, especially on something like this, which you're most likely not going to run into, it's very important that I do not step away while I'm trying to teach you a process, so the mise en place becomes very fine-tuned to allow that to happen for you. Okay, so to start off, we have some basic ingredients for the fried rice. Let's go ahead and start with the platter first. So on this platter, I have green onions, carrots, shiitake mushroom. Let's go ahead and start off with the carrots. That one probably requires the most prep time needed for that. So I'm just going to peel out this carrot. Interesting enough about peelers is people don't realize that they go back and forth. So you can actually up and down like that. Most people have got stuck into just doing them in a straight line. Personally, I still like to peel my carrots in a straight line. I guess it's just preference sometimes, but it's kind of interesting sometimes about how the tools work and sometimes what you've never realized. This peeler, for instance, has like a little tip on that. That's for when you're peeling potatoes and potatoes seem to have little dimples. This tip enables you to take out those little pits. So kind of interesting. Maybe everybody knew that, maybe they didn't. If you didn't, you know now. So we're just gonna go ahead and peel 2 carrots. I don't think we need to do more than that. We're not feeding the masses today. One thing you can see is when you're cooking, you want to have something next to you to be able to put your trash in. And I'm not talking about a trash can. You could have something for your recyclables. You could have some for the produce. That is how you end up staying clean while you're doing your cooking. And the cleaner you are, the more organized you're gonna feel. And that definitely pays off for me. I don't feel like I'm out of control. I feel like everything looks nice and clean. And ultimately, it just ends up giving you a little bit more confidence. So I just took off the tops of the carrots, the bottom of the carrots. So we have 2 carrots here. Now, for safety's sake, we need to dice these. Trying to dice them whole, it's a lot of ground to cover on some of these cuts. So I'm gonna go ahead, cut them in half now. Try to build them into something that's a little more friendly as far as cutting. And then as far as dicing a carrot, the first cut's the most dangerous, is anything you have that's round is gonna wanna roll. And anytime you're putting something sharp into something that's round, that's when you wanna pay the most attention. That's your danger point. So basically what I did was I cut this carrot like that. I created a flat side on this. That way now I can lay that flat side down. I still have the other piece here. And now I have a carrot that's a lot more stable. So then I'm basically, carrot was laying like that, right? Then I went through and I cut it into almost like slats. And what you're gonna do, you're gonna lay your slats down flat. So as you go, it becomes less dangerous as long as you keep your eyes on the knife. You're gonna go ahead and cut these up into the size dice you want. This could be the same thing too for when you do crudité boards. Really, you need to hone your knife skills. So you end up with a stack of carrots like that. And then what you want to do is come across, go ahead and cut your dice. Okay. Depends on you on how precise you want to be. That's a basic dice. They're not the cleanest, but they're all pretty uniform. And that's one thing about doing your cuts is you really want to, if you're cutting something that you're going to cook, you want to make sure your cuts are pretty consistent, because the larger, if you have large cuts and small cuts of the same item, they're going to cook at different times. And that's why we're pretty precise about the shapes all being the same. So if I'm trying to cook this with this, cooking's a lot of common sense. This one's probably going to be done first. So hence why you want to be pretty strict with your cuts, at least size-wise. Let's go ahead and do a small one. So we got the smaller one. So now we say, oh my God, what do we want to do with this one? This one I'm going to cut right down the middle. And then we have a flat side on each. And then I'm just going to go ahead and cut up my, get a little caught there. Cut up. Excuse me? We're going to go ahead and cut up our dice. So basically for the carrots of the dish, that is what you want to do. You move these to the side. And then, I don't know if we can do any questions now. Does anybody know what blanching is? Anybody's welcome to reply on that. Okay, so blanching is when you're taking a vegetable and you're shocking it in hot water. Basically, what you're doing is you're putting a par cook on it. The reason for that is it speeds up the cooking process. And say in the fried rice, I don't want to sit there and cook the carrots for 5 minutes to get them to a point where they're soft before I can start my process. That's a huge process when it comes to industrial cooking, because we're feeding sometimes 300 people in a restaurant at a pop, and time becomes like a pretty crucial element in that, which basically translates down in the profit. So as far as blanching the carrots, you can see, hopefully, I have a pot on over here, has boiling water in it. I'm going to kind of go through the process with you. What you would do is bring that water up to a boil. You would go ahead and add, I would say just a pinch of salt, maybe like a tablespoon. I wouldn't be too worried about over salting too much on that. Basically what the salt's doing is it really sets the color in vegetables. So you guys have all seen peas and spinach that are more like an olive green. If you add salt to the water and you drop them in, these carrots, I would say you drop in for a minute, drain out, chill down with cold water. They're going to be somewhat tender. They're still going to have a bite to them. The other thing it does is we could see here, luckily my sous chef already went ahead and did the blanching for me, since we could just explain it to you. You can see how bright those carrots are. And these are set. These are tender. You could eat them just like that. And that way you have a nice color going. You're not worrying about losing that as much and whatnot. So with that being said, for the fried rice, one of the ingredients I'm doing is diced carrot. So once we finished our blanching process, we're going to go ahead and get that mise en place in this bowl over here. Trying to get all our stuff ready for when we're ready to go as far as the cooking process. Just put these over to the side. Next ingredient, we'll go with the really hard one. It's frozen peas. They come right out of the bag. They're done. Just want to thaw them out the night before. We'll go ahead and put that one in there. Okay, what do we have left on our list? So shiitake mushrooms. There's many different mushrooms, as we all know. They all have a different structure. The stems on them all vary. Some are edible, some are not. Let's face it, you probably could eat the stem on this. I just don't think it would be that big of a pleasure for you. Reason being, shiitake mushroom stems are very fibrous. I almost like relate them to wood. You can see I'm pulling on this one. That's not going anywhere. So with shiitake mushrooms, you're going to want to go ahead and take your mushroom, cut the stems off. You could use your knife. I would say if you ever have the opportunity to do something with scissors, use the scissors. It takes out the statistics of you ending up cutting yourself. So like I said, go ahead and use the scissors. Everything here has been washed, picked through, cleaned. Just going to get rid of a couple stems here, right? So you can see shiitake mushroom now, stems off. You could save, I will tell you, you could save a lot of this, these after-cut products for vegetable stock. That's another kind of hint as to what you can do with products. That's what we do in our industry, is we save everything. Everything's money and profit. And we try to utilize everything. That way we're not wasting anything. Shiitake mushrooms, I'm going to do almost like a sliver cut. You could call it a julienne. It's not a traditional, but you could either call it sliver cut, julienne. Now that I'm kind of getting active in the cooking, or in the chopping, excuse me, I think everybody's kind of heard the concept of how to cut. You definitely want to keep your fingers in. That enables when this knife is coming down, nothing's out, it's coming down. As long as you're going down like that, you're going to lessen the risk of an injury. Another big thing that most people don't know is everybody holds their knife like this. It's really meant to be choked up on. So you can see my finger is all the way up on the side. It's not under the blade. It's on the side, and my thumb is on the other side. What that does is if you're holding the knife like this, it's really easy to wobble back and forth. Rather, it's like anything, if you choke up, you take a little bit of the length out, you have more stability. It's much more rock solid. When I first tried to do this in culinary school, it felt really weird, but it's something you need to force yourself to do. And it will slow you down because you don't want to try to work at the same speed that you always did, but eventually you'll get fast again. And all around, if it means anything to you, like I can usually tell who has some ability to cook just by looking at how they hold their knife. So even if you don't know how to cook that well and hold the knife like that, you might get some extra props. So let's fire through these mushrooms. You can see I've been doing this for 24 years. I'm pretty kind of just, I could do it in my sleep. With whoever's starting out on this, I definitely would chop, chop, and eventually it'll come to you. You know, eventually it just takes that long that eventually your body is almost like in an instinct of how to do it, how to get those really uniform slices like we were talking about before with the carrots, you know, all being the same cube size for cooking times. The mushrooms are too. You can see that they're all pretty close down to the millimeter. That way you're not getting odd cooking going on. Everything's cooking at the same time. It's going to be the same way eventually here when we go to add these ingredients into the rice. They're going to go in at stages according to how fast something cooks or how it reacts. It's all pretty much, when I think of cooking, I really believe it's a real common sense thing. It takes a lot of organization. I feel like I've done pretty well in my career solely based on how organized I am. If you're organized, it's going to take a lot of the pressure out of it. And then the cooking also really comes down to your cooking techniques, which are saute, broiling, grilling. If you're able to do those techniques well, you will severely advance your cooking skills. And you really have to know the definition of what that is when it comes to, say, sauteing or what real grilling is, or broiling, or really how to properly blanch. Usually when things start to turn a little mediocre, it's going to be that one of the cooking techniques isn't being done right, or your order of how you're doing something isn't being done right. So I would highly advise everybody to spend a little time if you're serious about cooking and really study that. Study oils, breaking points in oils, what oils can handle certain heats. In fried rice, when I did at the Hyatt, it was a different story. It was a huge wok station. It actually had water flowing over the top because the heat was so intense it could crack the steel. So it's almost like there was a water layer that would just flow over it. And it reminded me really of a jet engine with woks that were paper thin. If I really wanted to take one of these woks, I could fold it in half. It would take a little bit of effort, but you know, when it comes to true wok, you're just searing at a really high temp. And once again, searing is a cooking technique, so you really want to understand exactly what searing is, because if you're not doing it right, you just end up with a mediocre result. Ultimately, usually I don't do do much Asian food at home that say would be wok driven, just because I know what the real wok is. And it's really hard to obtain the quality of certain dishes without that high intense heat. Like a good story of it, when I was at the Hyatt, they would bring all the clean woks over and put them to the left, and I noticed one of them still had some little bit of water in it. So I just wasn't thinking and decided I'll just dry this wok out real fast. So I turned it upside down and turned that heat on. Well, that heat's so intense from that wok station, and it came in and it domed out everywhere. Almost burnt my eyebrows off, which everybody tells me wasn't a good look for me. So yeah, it's a dangerous job, but you know, like I said, stay organized, know your cooking techniques, watch what you're doing, don't go faster than your pace, you'll be okay. Okay, so let's go ahead and do the next ingredient. We're doing green onion. So I just took the bottoms off. I usually always trim a little bit of the tips off. I mean, chances are they're just not gonna look that great anyways. You could just cut these directly as they are. I tend to like to slit mine down the middle, at least where, not like the single piece, but where the thickness is. So I'm gonna find that. I'm just gonna go down, cut through that, and then I'll show you the cut in a minute. A lot of Asian food, they're known for the styles of their cuts. This is gonna be on a bias, which means if you got a square and you're on a bias, you're slightly off a little. You'll see a lot of the carrots in Asian food are cut on a bias. Sometimes they even make like the little flowers out of the carrots, the little discs. Very well known in Asian cooking. I would say the higher you go into the more fine dining Asian restaurants, the more they try to turn each piece of produce into somewhat of like, a piece of art's going a little too far with it, but they're taking something that could be what it is and doing something more with it. And that's something I always tell my guys when it comes to our cooking, is if you can do something more with an ingredient, then do it. You know, don't just settle for something plain. You know, like really think it through. I mean, you don't want to create a mansion for somebody that's trying to buy a condo, but you know, if you can add a little more to your cooking than the average person, that's what sets you aside. And that's what I tried to do my whole career, was say, okay, I have this one ingredient. What can I do to make this ingredient better? Like say it's a leek. Well, I could make leek soup and cut up the leek and sweat it in with the carrots and blah, 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 and puree it, and you have leek soup. Or I could grill the leek before I start. That's going to add better flavor. It's going to be a little more unique. And that goes in. I don't want to get too far off track, but a little bit of like what they're doing with their produce. So once again, we have our green onion all cut up. If anybody has any questions so far, just go ahead and type them in. I love questions.
I would like to go back to kind of a wok being a traditional. What would you recommend for the home cook? What sort of pans or heat settings should they be doing or utilizing to get the best? I like to use my cast iron because I feel like that's kind of similar to the Korean bibimbap, but I always struggle with that.
Yeah, cast iron's really good because cast iron holds heat. Like something that we definitely struggle with in the kitchen is I could have a pan that's just ripping hot, right? The oil's starting to smoke, and that's what I want. And then I drop my ingredients in and it takes the temperature down. And all of a sudden I went from what should be saute cooking, which is high heat, high oil, down to almost like sweating. And sweating's almost where you're just trying to turn something translucent. For saute, you're almost searing this product. So that's a little reason why I decided to do the fried rice, is you can get away with it more. If I was somebody doing this, I honestly would find a really good non-stick pan. That's going to save you a lot of drama of the rice sticking. And you're going to see a little bit of that. And in some ways, that's good because that's the tastier part of the fried rice. But it will just enable you to not have so much stickage. And then I think from there, really it comes down to the burner. You got natural gas and you got a pretty big one, you know, and you can find a nice pan that's somewhat thinner, or you could use that cast iron as well. The cast iron's really good at dropping things in it and it doesn't lose that temperature. Hence why cast iron, a lot of people fry chicken in cast iron, because we can run into the same problem with that where you drop your chicken in and your oil's supposed to be at 325, 350, and now it's dropped down to 280 degrees, and now you're struggling to kind of get that to come back up. It's really about consistency with the pan, so that's what I would advise. Trying to hit like a real wok station just isn't going to happen. I remember when I would look into this burner, it looked like 2,000 Bic lighters turned up at full blast times 50. It like literally looked like a jet engine and it sounded like a jet engine. And like I said, they use peanut oil. Peanut oil holds some of the highest smoke point. Smoke point's going to be where your oil's on the verge of actually burning or breaking down. And you need to know that if I were to go into a wok station with extra virgin olive oil, it's probably going to catch on fire instantly. So definitely some things to know when it comes to that. Did that answer your question? Perfect.
That was
okay.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. So next item is our egg. There's two ways to do the egg. I'm going to go through the way that I did it because I don't have a non-stick pan and won't work on this type of burner. So I went ahead and kind of cooked my egg like you would like an omelet. I just simply scrambled egg. I put a little bit of lemon juice in the egg. That's a secret around here. It will stop your eggs from turning that kind of green, brownish color over time. You can see they're still real bright yellow. And then just with a little bit of oil, I just put it in the pan at low heat, let it do its thing, flipped it once and brought it out. I actually cut these down the size just so they would fit on the plate. So this is one way, you know, you have scrambled eggs left over from breakfast and you think you want to do fried rice the next day. It's really good. You could just save your leftover. You could go through, cut them up like I'm doing. I'm just simply cutting these into a dice. This really is a no-brainer. No big deal here. Even got a piece that's not like a square, whatever. Just gonna go through, chop them down. Like I said, I like to keep really clean. You can see my area is still like really, really organized. I'll give you a shot of that. That just helps me to feel like I'm not losing control. Supposedly around here, I'm good at organization skills from what I've been told. I think that's really a lot about cooking is really staying organized. When I cook at home, I like to actually wash my dishes while I'm still cooking components. That's usually my main challenge for myself. That way when my dish is done, I'm already cleaned up and I can really sit on my couch and eat my dinner and not know that I have a pile of junk left over for me in my kitchen that right after I had a good experience, I got to go and scrub all that stuff. That will kind of start to teach you how good you're actually getting if you can actually pull that off while you're doing it. So what it means is you're leaving yourself loophole time, which means that you're really in control. You're not rushing on processes. You actually have time to do other stuff while you're doing the cooking. That's something that I strive for. And ultimately, my boss isn't going to yell at me. He walks by, my station looks clean and good. So you can see kind of basically what we did here. We just got our 5 ingredients together. We still have our platter here. It looks all nice. We have our tools. We have our bowl with our possible components for stock. All right, so we're looking good. Next process is the rice. Go figure with fried rice, the rice is the most important thing. Really with that history of rice, I don't know this for a fact, but I'm gonna take a wild guess that fried rice was probably created by a community that was in poverty. That would be my thought. Because ultimately, we've all seen this where you eat your Chinese food at night, you come in the next morning, you're like, oh wow, this doesn't look that fun. It's all like a big chunk. I don't know what to do with it. Ultimately, what we do, the rice has to be cooked the day before, and it needs to be left in the refrigerator. You're looking for that leftover look. What we're gonna do is just break it up. You definitely wanna try to avoid having chunks in it, because you're just gonna have to break them up later when you're cooking, and it's just gonna cause you a little more drama. So, you know, definitely do it the right way and do it in the beginning now. You know, it's another thing too, psychologically, when your stuff looks really good, it just puts your mindset into a different state, even if you realize it or not. It's kind of like a clean car. Every time you wash your car, everybody's probably noticed that it seems like your car drives a little better. The reality is it probably doesn't drive any better. It's just that it feels good. And that's kind of the same concept I take with cooking, is have your stuff clean, have it tight, have it organized. You're just gonna feel better about the process. It's gonna be more of a pleasure. Okay, so let's move into the actual cooking of the fried rice. You guys can see the pan somewhat okay? I'll bring it over as I do it. So this burner here, a little bit different. We turn it on. It has to be a stainless steel pan to activate it. I would have shown you the non-stick. But all the non-sticks we have are aluminum. So they're not going to operate on this type of burner. Otherwise, it works really, really well. It's already getting pretty hot right when by sticking your hand in there like I did. If you do the rice with a nonstick, that was the intention, and the recipe that I gave you stated that you could just crack the egg directly into the pan and scramble it. I believe it was saute your vegetables, push them to one side of the pan, crack one egg in the other side of the pan, scramble it, reincorporate the vegetables, and then go on with the process. When we get to that stage here, I'll point it out to you. Say, hey, like I was saying, in the nonstick pan, this is when you would want to do this. Now, there's absolutely nothing wrong with having your egg pre-cooked. So either way is fine. I will say that I tend to like my egg like not quite as like beaten. I actually like to see a little bit of streaking of the yolk and the white. Yeah, it's like a different texture, but none of them are wrong. So we're waiting for our pan to heat up. Basically what I have here is the peanut oil. I don't know if it was exactly that necessary because of our temp here. We're gonna let this go for a second, and really, I think the recipe I gave you states you're looking for just a little bit of smoke to start to arise from the pan. That's usually a good indication that you're at that saute temperature that you're looking for, and then we can actually start the process.
Harley, we had a question about rice and what type do you recommend or what types we should avoid?
So I would not use a sushi grade high gluten because it sticks together too much. Even when it's cold, it's just more gummy. And there's a reason why they use it for sushi, because they want those rolls and those little finger domes to hold together and not fall apart. So for this one, I actually just used a really high quality jasmine. I like jasmine. I think it's a pretty good rice. You could just use white rice. There's also the technique too, if you could take your rice, measure it out, and then soak it in cold water for a couple minutes and kind of stir it a little. And you'll see the water's gonna turn really like milky color. That's excess starch, and that's a good thing to rinse some of that off. It will create somewhat of a drier rice and not quite as sticky. This jasmine, even on the bottom, luckily it's breaking up just fine, but I can feel it's almost like I have like a little muck on my hands. And so the more you rinse that rice a little bit, I definitely want to leave the rice in there for hours at a time. That definitely wouldn't be good. You're talking about a 5-minute process to try to get some of that starch off. So ultimately, a jasmine, a white rice, avoid high gluten rice. Some people would say like, oh man, this is gonna be the best rice, man. It was like $20 a pound. Well, chances are it probably isn't. I think I forgot to say, you know, my theory on the fried rice was it probably came out of poverty, and maybe I did say that. I'm thinking that somebody that was poor had this like old leftover rice and decided to do something that actually turned out really good. And that goes back to my point that you want to be able to play with things. You know, that's how things get invented. All right, so let's move forward. So I'm going to start with a little bit of shiitake mushroom. We could see like a little smoke was coming. Shiitakes tend to suck up the oil, any mushroom actually, but they'll drop it back out. We're going to add a little bit of carrot in here. So basically what I just did was I added the two things that I think are going to take the longest to cook. I want to get those under control first. Like green onion doesn't take any time to cook. The peas, you could probably eat them right out of the bowl. We're just trying to warm those up. And the egg that's cooked. So right now we kind of got a pan. It's going like that. See everything sizzling. Get that going a little. Okay, next in line, we're going to add the peas. Now don't let anybody tell you, oh, you're putting too much of that in, unless it's like soy sauce. But like ingredient-wise, hey, if you just, eggs make your day, have at it, right? You know, especially if you're cooking it for yourself. There's probably obviously a line to everything. But, you know, like I said, you learn from your mistakes. I really think that some of the things that have done me best in life were the mistakes I made. I learned not to ever make them again. You know, it's fun winning too, but you know, it's not a perfect world and you got to have both. All right, so now we got our peas in there, it's looking like that. I'm gonna add my egg. And I'm gonna add my rice. Okay, we're just gonna go ahead and get that incorporated. As far as the whole flipping thing, I wouldn't do that if you're not comfortable with it. Use a spoon. A quick way to learn how to do that technique is go get yourself a ping pong ball, put it in a pan. And if you can do that ping pong ball in a pan, then you're going to be able to eventually flip food. Okay, I'm going to add a little bit of sesame oil. I will warn you, sesame oil goes a long ways, so it's always best to start off a little bit cautious. And then if you feel like you need more of that flavor, then do that. And then I'm going to add my gluten-free soy sauce. Okay, so ultimately we're doing a vegetarian fried rice here. You could go vegan, take out the egg. I would say other ingredients that are really, really good. Baby bok choy, celery. I mean, really don't limit yourself. Like I said, we used to do a 12 ingredient fried rice. I didn't invent that at the Hyatt. It's kind of funny because when I counted everything that I put in that rice, it ended up being more like a 28 ingredient. So for 2 years, I used to stare at these ingredients and try to figure out which one really was part of the 12. So, you know, and I'm still not sure. So it's a life's mystery. Okay, so basically, we got our rice started. You can see, oh, look at that. It looks like fried rice. So we're doing something right. Basically, I'm just going to cook that up a lot. I would say you don't want to cook it like a massive amount, or you might end up breaking down the rice itself, and then you'll end up with all these weird, like, little particles. But ultimately, that's it. I tend to like to add just a little bit of regular salt to my fried rice as well. Even though it has soy, they are different. Even though they both are like sodium, they're different from one another. Or else maybe we would just never have soy sauce, or maybe we would never have salt. So there's a reason behind it. So I add a little bit. If you want to add a little bit of black pepper, you could. If you want to add garlic, you could. It's really up to you. You know, you can't really go wrong on this. One thing I was telling you is you're going to get these particles here that are stuck. They're almost like crispy. Weird enough. Sorry about the tap. Weird enough, that's the best part of the fried rice. I don't know if anybody's ever gone to like a eatery where they cook in front of you and they do the rice. Forget the name of that. Like a shoguns or whatever. And then they always have that rice they scrape off at the end, and then they ask everybody, like, would you like it? And everybody looks at him like he's weird. And then there's one person that's like instantly on it. That's the person that knows what's going on. So this tends to be the best part. So with that said, you can always add a little bit of green onion on the top as far as garnish. Hit it up like that. Usually we'll go around, we'll clean our plates up. Big thing in culinary school was not having anything on the edge of your plate. I've seen many people take lower grades for that, but that's life. So anyways, we have 2 fried rice. They look like that. You can see they're steaming. They look good. They're hot. That's basically the technique on the fried rice. I think we have about 10 minutes left, 9 minutes to be exact. Got to be good at time if you want to start cooking on a professional level. So we could take any questions anybody has. I have one actually out here in the audience.
Can you substitute canola oil if you're not fortunate enough to have peanut oil in your pantry?
Yeah, you could substitute canola oil instead of peanut oil. I would say, honestly, unless you're on a real wok station, I wouldn't worry so much about the peanut oil. It actually is going to add an allergy, if anything, into your food, and you need to take that in account. If you have somebody that has a peanut allergy, then yeah, I would just do canola oil, or I would do grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil has a pretty high smoke point that can deal with some definite heat. Peanuts the top, you know, anything from canola to grapeseed on down. Avocado oil's a little more sensitive, and then olive oils are really sensitive. So,
Harley, we had a question from somebody who likes to put tofu into their stir fry, but it often gets stuck or is really hard to incorporate into the dish. Do you have any tricks if we wanted to add tofu in and what process we would put it in?
Sure. So the technique we use at catering, which actually wasn't mine, I don't want to take credit for it. We actually pickle our tofu. So we just take our tofu and we soak it in it's half water and half plain white vinegar. You can also use apple cider vinegar, whatnot. So it's 50% water, 50% vinegar, acid. As long as it's submerged, you drop that block in there and leave it for a couple days. What that's going to do, it's going to firm up your tofu quite a bit. And the more firm the tofu is, the less chance you're going to get of it sticking. Now, the other way you could go about it could almost be like what I did with the eggs. So last night I had sauteed vegetables over, weird enough, over white rice with Chinese spice tofu. So I had that tofu pickled out. I cut it in the cubes. I dried it off. I tossed it in a bowl with Chinese spice, and then on the side in a nonstick pan, I griddled them so they were almost like golden brown. And then I reserved that on the side. I cooked all my vegetables, or what this would be, your rice, and then added in at the end. Just add it in as an ingredient. It's basically like the egg, it's already done. It's ready to eat at that point. Fold it into your mix and avoid, trying to put that in the beginning and doing it that way would be my advice.
And I even like to just take paper towels and really pat any of tofu off if I'm frying it, just to get a lot of that liquid out. That helps a lot if you're going directly from the fridge to the pan.
Yeah, you'll get more dangers coming out. Any water and oil, they don't mix for a reason.
Does anyone else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself or pop them in the chat. Jack would like you to repeat how you pickle your tofu, and what else do you use pickled tofu for? Or is that kind of your standard whenever you use tofu in a dish, is to pickle it beforehand?
We tend to pickle it for whatever we're going to use. Now, I'll tell you, I just gave you a really basic pickling / kind of brine that you're doing. So now you could throw cloves, you could throw cinnamon sticks. If you don't want it that flavor, you could throw rosemary, thyme into that liquid. You could throw pink peppercorns. Almost any flavor that you want that tofu to absorb. You could figure out what's in the brine for a turkey, find those spices, put it in with the tofu. Maybe you got somebody that's vegetarian or whatever, Thanksgiving. Well, now you go, I got this Thanksgiving brine flavored tofu. The mix was 50-50. It was 50% water, 50% vinegar. And you just need enough that the tofu is completely submerged. That way you don't have something sticking up that's not getting kind of pickled a little bit. Then basically we take ours, we tend to cut it into almost rectangle slabs. We grill them a lot. We have a dish that's a curry chicken salad, and we get some that want a tofu. We'll grill the tofu and then cube it up and make the dish the same way. It's just not chicken, it's tofu. We've done a barbecue one for summer where we do a lot of barbecue chicken. Well, we get people the barbecue tofu. We mark it on the grill and paste it the same way we would the chicken and put it out that way. Really, it's, when you sit down and think about it, there's so many different combinations that you can do that a lot of what, even with what I just showed you today, this is basic. You could have another 10 other vegetables out here. You could have maybe local Santa Barbara spot prawns that are going into this, or maybe somebody's fresh organic chicken that came from 10 miles away, or, you know, and really highlight the ingredients that you're using. A lot in my career, I took it as a challenge a lot to not seek super high-end ingredients, because I figured I wanted to show, like, look, you can still make really, really good food out of the basics if you know what you're doing with your cooking techniques. Now, when you start adding those candy cane beets and things, you're gonna start doing that because you want the wow factor, and the flavors are better, and the vitamin contents, and overall those are usually probably coming from a sustainable source in your community, and you need to take care of people like that, especially with what's going on right now. It's very important to support the community. There's no reason why we need to have massive factories that are giving you mediocre products. You know, it's a good time for change, but kind of lost how I got to that point. But you know, think into what you're doing, and you'd be surprised how many variation and choices you could come up with.
How long would you say the cooking process is? I know I personally love fried rice. It's a great way to use up any leftovers that I have in the fridge or sad looking produce. But I feel like sometimes I get a little ahead of myself and I'll start cooking. And then as the process goes on, there's that perfect spot where all the colors are vibrant, and then you start to move into the caramelization. So I often will cook mine too long. So I'm just curious what your hints are on that, or just having as many ingredients prepped, because it's really only a couple minutes on high heat, at least in restaurants.
Yeah, it is, you know, doing a breakfast and Asian cooking are the fastest cooking fields. And I specifically remember as Chef Victor in culinary school came up to me and said, you better have everything ready to go, because it's such a fast cooking process, you're not going to have time to go fix your mistake. And he made sure to really emphasize your mistake. So, you know, this, I probably cooked it, you know, we're maybe in there 4 or 5 minutes, right? I think I started at 11:42. You can see too, the peas are still real green in there. They're holding, you know. I think it really is just, it's harder for people that don't have a natural instinct for it, you know, I'm not gonna lie. And especially, like I said, like I never used recipes my whole career, like at all. They would show me what they were looking for, and that's probably how I got farther in a lot of these like fine dining places, because that's the skill you need to have. You know, we would laugh if somebody was asking for a recipe when you're at that level of cooking, because you should already know. That's not to say like that anybody out there, you should be following recipes because they're gonna teach you. So for me, it almost comes like a second instinct, especially with what I do in catering. Is the name of catering is how to give somebody the same quality of food they would get at a restaurant, but that one that we've had to reserve time before we could serve it. So there's tricks of the trade on really how to make your products last. And then back to your question about how long to actually cook them, depending on your scenario. You know, if somebody's right in front of you and they're ready to eat, well, go all the way. If you know, like, you know, even in restaurants, we're like, oh no, they got up to go to the bathroom and this thing's done. Okay, what do I need to do to make sure that it's going to end up out there in the same quality that it is right now? And, you know, really studying the ingredients you work with, how they react to the different scenarios, and kind of, and you just pick it up. The more you do, the more you pick up. You know, you're gonna make mistakes. Don't feel bad, but that's how you learn. That's just, we're not robots, and that's just the way it goes with this field. You know, if you like precision and don't like dealing with like non-precise numbers, then you should be baking.
I think that's a great point that you make of it's really what you want to eat, what your tastes are, what you have at home. That's a great point of this recipe, and getting yourself comfortable with different ingredients and different cuisines is really just getting in the kitchen, testing them out. I do want to be respectful of everyone's time and thank everyone for coming, as well as Chef Harley for making a very delicious and torturous looking fried rice. I wish I was there snacking on it with you soon enough. And if anyone else has last minute questions, feel free. Otherwise, have a wonderful rest of your day, and thank you. And again, let us know if there's other workshops that you would like to see in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much, everybody. I hope to see you again in the future in person.
Likewise. All right, well, I'm gonna end it. Thank you everyone again, and we'll pick this back up come fall. Maybe have a couple workshops in the summer, so keep eyes peeled for that. And again, thank you for all your wonderful wisdom. I can't wait to start using more lemon juice in my eggs, because I think that's something I struggle with, is the cook time and the keeping the colors just popping, because you eat with your eyes first. So I learned some fun tricks that I'll start using in my kitchen.
Great, thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.